Ambassador Zixthara had served the Galactic Council for over 3 centuries, and in all that time, she had never encountered a file with such restricted access. The holographic display flickered before her compound eyes as she attempted to breach the security protocols for the 7th time that cycle. Classification level: Absolute 0. The display read in standard galactic script: Authorized personnel, Council Prime only. Warning: Unauthorized access punishable by exile to the void reaches. The amber text pulsed ominously in the sterile blue light of her workstation. Around her, the vast information nexus of the Galactic Council hummed with the constant flow of data streams from across the galaxy. Thousands of terminals processed everything from trade agreements between the Vrex Consortium to military deployment reports from the Krillian frontier wars. Yet here was a single file that stood apart from all others, locked behind security measures that made state secrets look like public announcements. What made this file even more peculiar was its designation: Terra Prime 001, the humans' homeworld. But humans were barely a Type 1 civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 standard years ago. Their first contact protocols were still being finalized. Their diplomatic corps consisted of a handful of enthusiastic but naive representatives who seemed perpetually amazed by basic galactic technology. What could possibly warrant such extreme classification for a species that had barely mastered antimatter containment? Zixthara's mandibles clicked in frustration, the chitinous sound echoing in her private work chamber. As the Council's chief information coordinator, she had clearance for virtually everything in the network. Military secrets of the Krillian Empire that could shift the balance of power in 3 sectors. The genetic templates of the ethereal collective that lesser species would kill to obtain. Economic projections that could topple governments and crash entire star system economies. Archaeological data from the precursor sites that held technologies beyond current galactic understanding. All of it was accessible to her with a simple biometric scan and authorization code. Her security clearance was one of only 12 at her level in the entire galactic government, earned through centuries of faithful service and an impeccable record of discretion. But not this file. This single, innocuous entry in a database of trillions. Written in the primitive script the humans called English. She had first noticed it 3 cycles ago during a routine audit of classified materials. The file structure was unusual, older than it should be for a recently contacted species, with encryption algorithms that seemed far too sophisticated for human technology. When she'd attempted standard access procedures, she'd been denied. When she'd tried elevated clearance protocols, she'd been denied. When she'd finally resorted to her ultimate authorization codes, the system had simply displayed that chilling message about exile to the void reaches. The void reaches. Even the mention of that punishment made her exoskeleton tremble. It was reserved for only the most heinous crimes against galactic security. She had seen the records of only 3 individuals ever sentenced to that fate, their names erased from all databases, their existence wiped from galactic memory. Her 6-fingered hands danced across the holographic interface, trying one more backdoor protocol she'd discovered years ago during the Centauri data wars. It was technically illegal, a relic from her younger days when she'd been more interested in acquiring information than following proper channels. The screen pulsed with cascading data streams as her hidden program wormed its way through security layers that had been designed to stop even the most sophisticated intrusion attempts. For a moment, she thought she'd failed again. The security wall seemed impenetrable, a digital fortress protecting whatever lay within. Then it opened. What she saw made her blood run cold in her veins. The security breach confirmation flashed once, then dissolved into something that made Zixthara's compound eyes strain to comprehend. The display filled with text in an alien script, angular, primitive-looking characters that her universal translator was struggling to parse. The system's linguistic analysis protocols were working furiously, cross-referencing the symbols against thousands of known languages and dialects. Classified document, Terra Prime 001. Authorized access only. Language, English, Ancient Human Script. Translation protocol, initiated. The words materialized slowly, her translator overlaying meaning onto the strange human symbols. What disturbed her most was the timestamp on the document. According to the file metadata, this entry was over 1,500 years old, predating first contact with humanity by millennia. Yet the humans were supposed to be a young species, having only recently achieved interstellar capability. To whoever finds this record, know that it was not meant for alien eyes. But if you are reading this, then perhaps the galaxy deserves to know the truth about humanity's arrival among the stars. The words seemed to pulse with an ominous weight. Zixthara's breathing apparatus made a soft whistling sound as she adjusted the atmospheric mix in her chamber, a nervous habit she developed during her early years as an intelligence analyst. My name is Dr. James Harrison, former director of the United Earth Defense Initiative. I am writing this in the year 2387 by human reckoning, 3 days before my scheduled termination by council order. They believe they are silencing me to maintain galactic stability. They do not realize I have already uploaded this record to 17 separate nodes across the network, encrypted in a language they cannot comprehend without their translation matrices. Termination by council order? Zixthara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed this information. She had access to all council termination records, and there was no mention of any human named James Harrison. Moreover, the year 2387 by human reckoning would be approximately 1,500 years ago in standard galactic time. How could a human have been operating under council authority when humanity was supposedly still confined to their home system? The galaxy thinks it discovered humanity 50 years ago, when our first crewed FTL vessel stumbled into Centauri space. This is a lie. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Zixthara felt her exoskeleton shiver involuntarily. She had been present at those first contact ceremonies, had helped draft the integration protocols for the eager but technologically inferior human species. She remembered the quaint enthusiasm of their diplomatic corps, their wide-eyed amazement at basic galactic technologies. Humanity has been in the galaxy for over 2,000 years. The translation matrix flickered, as if the computer itself was struggling to believe what it was parsing. 2,000 years? That was impossible. It predated the formation of the current Galactic Council by 3 centuries. The humans showed all the characteristics of a newly spacefaring species: primitive technology, single-system governance, barely cohesive social structures, and an almost childlike wonder at encountering other intelligent life. She continued reading, her translator working overtime to parse the alien grammar structures, which seemed far more complex than the simple trade pidgin the human diplomats used in council chambers. We came not as conquerors, but as refugees. Earth was dying, not from war or natural disaster, but from something far worse. Something that still hunts us across the void. We scattered ourselves among the stars, seeding human colonies on 100 worlds, always moving, always hiding. Some of us integrated with existing civilizations. Others founded our own. Many simply vanished into the deep black, carrying human culture and knowledge to places we can no longer track. The humans, the ones from Earth, they are the descendants of those we left behind. The volunteers who stayed to maintain the deception, to make it appear that humanity had never left its birth world, never achieved true interstellar civilization. But we had. And we learned, and we adapted, and some of us became something more. The document contained coordinates, dozens of them, scattered across the galaxy's spiral arms like a constellation of secrets. Zixthara's hands trembled as she cross-referenced them with the Stellar Cartography database, her security clearance granting her access to classified location data. Every single one corresponded to a critical infrastructure hub of the galactic civilizations. The coordinates led Zixthara down a digital rabbit hole that shattered every assumption she had ever held about galactic civilization. Her workstation's processing cores hummed with increased activity as she cross-referenced each location against the Council's most sensitive databases. What she discovered made her question not just humanity's true nature, but the very foundation of the society she had served for 3 centuries. Each coordinate corresponded to something vital, something that would cripple galactic civilization if it were to fail. The primary data processing center for the Vrex Trade Consortium, where all interstellar commerce routes were calculated and managed. The main communications relay for the Ethereal Collective, the quantum entanglement network that allowed instantaneous communication across the galaxy. The backup power grid control center for the Krillian military's command structure, the facility that could activate or deactivate defense systems across 17 star systems. Her six-fingered hands moved frantically across the holographic interface as she pulled up personnel records for each facility. The names were properly varied: Kelnoth, the Vrex Commerce Coordinator; Zarindi, the Ethereal Network Specialist; Bralex, the Krillian Systems Commander; Morthal, the Infrastructure Overseer. All respected members of their species, with decades of exemplary service records and impeccable credentials. But when she ran biometric comparisons using algorithms she developed during counterintelligence operations, disturbing patterns emerged. Facial bone structures that were remarkably similar despite supposedly different species origins. Genetic markers in their medical files that didn't quite match their official racial profiles. Subtle discrepancies that would be invisible to casual observation but stood out under detailed analysis. Height and weight ratios that clustered around remarkably similar baselines when adjusted for supposed species variance. Most disturbing were the behavioral patterns in their communication logs. She ran linguistic analysis on years of their official correspondence, looking for the kind of cultural tells that every species possessed. Instead, she found communication patterns that were too uniform, too efficient, lacking the regional dialects and cultural quirks that should have been present in beings from different worlds and backgrounds. They're all human, she realized with growing horror, her exoskeleton trembling as the implications crashed over her. Somehow, they're all human. She returned to the document with shaking hands, dreading what new revelations awaited her. We discovered early that humanity possesses a unique trait among sapient species: adaptability. Not just behavioral adaptability, not just the ability to learn new customs or languages. Biological adaptability. Our genetic structure is more malleable than any other known species in the galaxy. With the right techniques, developed over centuries of desperate research, we can alter our appearance, our physiology, even our lifespans to match any species we encounter. It began as a survival mechanism during our flight from Earth, a way to hide among our potential enemies until we could determine whether they posed the same threat that had driven us from our homeworld. But we discovered something remarkable. We didn't just become effective at mimicking other species. We became better at being them than they were. The clinical precision of the language couldn't hide the monstrous implications of what she was reading. The document continued with statistical analyses that made her blood run cold. A human operating as a Vrex trader could process economic data 17% faster than a natural Vrex, due to our enhanced pattern recognition capabilities. A human modified to ethereal specifications could manipulate quantum fields with precision that amazed even the ethereal masters, because our neural plasticity allowed us to adapt to quantum consciousness techniques more rapidly than the species that had invented them. We didn't just infiltrate galactic society, we began to excel at it. Within 500 years, humans held key positions in every major galactic civilization. We were their best generals, their finest scientists, their most successful leaders. And they never knew. Zixthara's compound eyes widened as she processed the implications. She pulled up the Galactic Leadership Database. The current Supreme Commander of the Krillian Fifth Fleet. General Orcs, the brutal, famous for his tactical genius. The Ethereal Collective's primary researcher into quantum consciousness. Nexus Prime Veltar, whose innovations had revolutionized galactic technology. She ran their biometric data through the pattern-matching algorithm she developed. Both human, both perfect biological mimics of their adopted species. Her hands trembled as she continued reading. Zixthara's compound eyes widened as she processed the implications of what she had just read. Her breathing apparatus cycled rapidly as she accessed the Galactic Leadership Database, her security clearance opening doors that few beings in the galaxy were permitted to cross. The names and faces that appeared on her screen were legendary figures, beings whose decisions shaped the fate of entire star systems. The current Supreme Commander of the Krillian Fifth Fleet, General Orcs, the brutal, famous throughout 3 sectors for his tactical genius in the Outer Rim campaigns. His strategic innovations had saved billions of lives and secured Krillian dominance over their traditional rivals. The Ethereal Collective's primary researcher into quantum consciousness, Nexus Prime Veltar, whose revolutionary work had advanced galactic technology by centuries, making faster-than-light communication and transdimensional engineering possible. She ran their biometric data through the pattern-matching algorithm she developed, her hands trembling as the results materialized on her display. The facial structure analysis, genetic markers, even the subtle behavioral patterns in their recorded speeches, everything pointed to the same impossible conclusion. Both human, both perfect biological mimics of their adopted species. Both leaders whose natural talents had elevated them to positions where they could influence the course of galactic history. Her hands shook as she returned to the document, dreading what new revelations awaited her. By the year 2200, we faced a moral crisis that nearly tore our hidden civilization apart. We had become the secret leaders of galactic civilization, guiding the development of a dozen species while pretending to be them. We told ourselves it was necessary, that we were protecting the galaxy from the threat that had driven us from Earth. But the truth was simpler and more damning. We had become the puppeteers, and the galaxy was our stage. The decision to maintain the deception was not unanimous. Many of us wanted to reveal ourselves, to work openly with our galactic neighbors as equals rather than hidden manipulators. But the pragmatists won the debate, and their arguments were compelling. We had seen what happened when species learned the truth about human infiltration. The document displayed historical records that Zixthara had to verify against her own classified archives. The Zaxtani Civil War, a conflict she had studied extensively during her early years in intelligence work. According to official records, it had been a standard succession dispute that had escalated beyond all reasonable bounds. The Zaxtani Civil War was fought entirely because their government discovered that their beloved Emperor Zax was actually a modified human named Michael Torres. The revelation didn't just destroy their faith in their leader, it shattered their entire sense of cultural identity. If their greatest emperor was an alien imposter, what did that say about their achievements as a species? 30 billion died in that conflict. 30 billion beings who perished because they learned that their civilization's golden age had been guided by someone who wasn't truly one of them. Zixthara felt her exoskeleton go cold as she cross-referenced the casualty figures. The numbers matched her historical database perfectly. She had always wondered why such a politically minor succession dispute had escalated to system-wide warfare. Now she knew, so we maintained the lie. We established the protocol, a comprehensive system for managing galactic civilization without revealing our true nature. Every major decision in galactic politics for the past 5 centuries has been coordinated through a hidden network of human agents. Wars are started and ended according to human strategic objectives. Economic systems are manipulated to benefit human-controlled interests. Scientific research is guided toward discoveries that strengthen humanity's covert control. The implications were staggering. Every peace treaty she had helped negotiate, every trade agreement she had processed, every military deployment she had analyzed, all of it had potentially been orchestrated by a species that was supposed to be galactic newcomers. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had conquered it through excellence. Zixthara, the document suddenly addressed her directly, causing her to physically recoil from the display as if the screen had reached out to touch her. Her exoskeleton rattled against her chair as she stared at the impossible words. Yes, I know you're reading this. The file was designed specifically to trigger when accessed by the Chief Information Coordinator's credentials. You see, we've been monitoring the Council's communication patterns, administrative hierarchies, and security protocols for decades. We knew that eventually, someone with your exact clearance level, your intellectual curiosity, and your particular skill set would attempt to breach this file. The casual intimacy of being addressed by name by a document that was supposedly written centuries ago sent chills through her entire nervous system. How long had they been watching her? How much did they know about her daily routines, her investigation methods, her personal habits? My name is Director James Harrison, but I am not the same human who wrote the earlier portions of this document. I am what the original Harrison became after 2,000 years of genetic modification, consciousness transfer, and technological augmentation. I am human in origin, but I am also something else entirely, something that transcends the limitations of any single biological form. You've read about our infiltration of galactic society, about our moral struggles and our ultimate decision to guide civilization from the shadows. What you haven't learned yet is why it was necessary. Why we couldn't simply reveal ourselves and work openly with other species. Why the deception had to be maintained at any cost. The document shifted, and Zixthara's workstation struggled to process the massive data files that began streaming across her display. Stellar maps appeared that made her mind reel with their implications. They showed the galaxy as it existed 10,000 years ago, with hundreds of civilizations marked in brilliant green across the spiral arms. The Milky Way had been alive with intelligence, teeming with diverse species that had achieved everything from basic space flight to near-godlike technological mastery. Then the same map 5,000 years later. Only half the civilizations remained. Their markers shifted from green to ominous red. Entire sectors that had once blazed with the light of a dozen different species now showed only empty space or single, dominant cultures that bore no resemblance to what had come before. Then again, 1,000 years later, fewer still. Great swaths of the galaxy that had once hosted thriving interstellar communities were now marked with symbols that her translator couldn't properly interpret. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe when she looked at them directly. The hunters are not a species, Zixthara. They are something far worse. They are what remains of a civilization that mastered the ultimate art of warfare. The complete consumption of other civilizations. Not through conquest, which leaves survivors who can rebuild. Not through genocide, which leaves empty worlds that others can claim. Through total absorption. They study a target species until they understand every aspect of their biology, psychology, culture, and technology. Then they replicate that species perfectly, gradually replacing the original population until no trace of the authentic civilization remains. The absorbed species continues to exist, continues to function, continues to advance technologically. But they are no longer themselves. They are extensions of the hunter collective, wearing the faces and memories of those they have consumed. They had done this to 17 galactic civilizations before we encountered them. We were to be number 18, but humanity proved more resilient than they expected. When they attempted to infiltrate and replace us, they discovered our unique adaptability. We could detect their replacements because we ourselves were constantly changing. Their perfect mimicry stood out against our fluid nature. The war lasted 3 centuries. We won, but at a cost. Earth was left a barren wasteland, and our species was scattered across the void. We thought we had destroyed them entirely. We were wrong. The document displayed recent sensor data from monitoring stations across the galactic rim. Energy signatures that matched no known technology. Ships that appeared to be constructed from organic materials but moved with mechanical precision. Civilizations on the outer rim that had suddenly stopped responding to communications, but whose automated systems continued functioning perfectly. They're coming again. The hunters have found new prey, and they're working their way toward the galactic core. Every species they've encountered has been absorbed. The Kilrani Syndicate, the Outer Rim Confederacy, the Twilight Collective, all gone, replaced by perfect imitations that continue to function exactly as the originals did, except for small inconsistencies, communication patterns that are too efficient, resource management that's too optimal, creative output that follows mathematical models rather than organic inspiration. The same inconsistencies we've spent 2 millennia perfecting in our own infiltration of galactic society. Zixthara realized the horrifying implication. The humans had become so skilled at replacing other species that they had inadvertently created the perfect training ground for recognizing when species were being replaced. Which brings us to why you're reading this, Ambassador Zixthara. We need the galactic community to know the truth. Not because we're altruistic, but because we need allies for what's coming. The hunters will reach the core systems within 50 years. When they do, they'll find a galaxy that's been secretly managed by humans for 2 millennia. They'll study our techniques. They'll learn our methods. And they'll use them to create an infiltration strategy that no species in the galaxy will be able to detect. Unless we act first. We are offering the galactic community a choice, Ambassador Zixthara. Accept humanity's revelation and work with us to prepare for the coming threat, or continue living in ignorance until the hunters arrive to absorb every civilization in the galaxy. I know what you're thinking. Why should any species trust us? We've been manipulating galactic affairs for 2,000 years. We've placed our agents in positions of power throughout your civilizations. We've started wars and ended them according to our strategic needs. The answer is simple because we've been remarkably good at it. The document displayed statistical analyses that Zixthra verified against the Council's own records. Galactic conflict had decreased by 73% over the past 5 centuries. Economic efficiency had improved by 45%. Technological advancement had accelerated by 230%. Species extinction rates had dropped to near zero. We haven't been perfect stewards, but we've been effective ones. The galaxy under human guidance has been more prosperous, more peaceful, and more innovative than it had been for millennia before our arrival. We didn't conquer you through force, we improved you through excellence. But the hunters represent a threat that even we cannot face alone. Their absorption technique is based on perfect replication, which means they'll eventually be able to replicate our ability to replicate others. When that happens, no species in the galaxy will be safe. However, if we work together, if we combine humanity's adaptability with the unique strengths of every galactic species, we can create something the hunters have never encountered. A truly unified defense that uses our differences as advantages rather than weaknesses. The proposal was audacious. Humanity would reveal the truth about their infiltration and offer to work openly with galactic civilization. In exchange, they wanted access to every species' biological and cultural data to create hybrid defense forces that could counter the hunters' absorption techniques. We're not asking you to trust us out of kindness or moral obligation. We're asking you to trust us because we've already proven we can make the galaxy better. The question is whether you want to face the hunters as separate, vulnerable species, or as a unified civilization guided by those who understand both infiltration and resistance. The choice is yours, Ambassador Zixthra, but choose quickly. Our monitoring stations detect hunter scout ships at the galactic rim. They'll reach the outer core systems within 30 years, not 50 as we initially estimated. If you decide to share this information with the Galactic Council, use authentication code TerraPrime77 Alpha. This will activate sleeping protocols in our agents throughout galactic civilization. They will reveal themselves and offer their expertise in preparing for what's coming. If you decide to suppress this information, we understand. We'll continue operating in the shadows as we have for 2 millennia, doing our best to prepare secret defenses against the hunters. But our chances of success will be significantly lower. The file will self-destruct in 72 hours. Make your choice wisely. Director James Harrison, Human Integration Command. Pass your aid. Assistant Coordinator Velnira sends her regards. She's been one of our most effective agents for the past 60 years. Her real name is Commander Jennifer Walsh, formerly of the Earth Colonial Marines. She's been monitoring your progress on this investigation and is prepared to assist with whatever decision you make. Zixthra spun around to face her aide, who had been quietly working at a nearby terminal throughout her investigation. Velnira, or Jennifer Walsh, looked up with a perfectly familiar expression of concerned efficiency. I was wondering when you'd reach that part of the file, Velnira said in her usual melodic voice. For what it's worth, Ambassador, you've been an excellent supervisor. I've genuinely enjoyed working with you. Zixthra stared at her aide, her human aide, as the full implications of the situation crashed over her. Everything she thought she knew about galactic civilization was a lie. The council she served, the civilizations she represented, the very structure of their society. All of it had been guided by a species that was supposed to be primitives who had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. How many? She asked quietly. How many what, Ambassador? How many of you are there? How many humans hold positions in galactic civilization? Velnira Jennifer paused, as if calculating. Approximately 47% of all leadership positions above Level 7 clearance. About 32% of all scientific research positions. Roughly 28% of military command positions. And nearly 60% of all infrastructure management roles. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had essentially become the backbone of galactic civilization while pretending to be newcomers. "Why reveal this now?" Zixthara asked. "You've maintained the deception for 2 millennia. Why risk everything?" Jennifer's expression grew serious. "Because the hunters are unlike anything the galaxy has faced. We've been preparing for their return for 2,000 years, but even with all our advantages, our projections show a maximum 30% chance of successful resistance if we fight them using covert methods." She activated a holographic display showing tactical simulations. Wave after wave of hunter absorption fleets overwhelming galactic defenses, with each absorbed civilization making them stronger and more adaptable. "But if we reveal ourselves and work openly with galactic civilization, if we combine human adaptability with the unique capabilities of every species, our success probability increases to 87%. Zixthara studied the simulations. The models were incredibly sophisticated, far beyond what she would have expected from the primitive humans. But then again, they weren't primitive at all. "What about the backlash?" she asked. "When civilizations learn they've been manipulated for centuries, there will be anger. Possibly war." "Probably," Jennifer agreed. "Our sociological models predict approximately 40% of galactic civilizations will initially respond with hostility. About 30% will attempt to purge all suspected human agents from their governments. The remaining 30% will be willing to work with us immediately. Those aren't encouraging odds." "No, they're not. But they're better than the alternative. The hunters don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They don't even really conquer, they simply replace. Every species they've encountered has ceased to exist while their perfect duplicates continue their civilizations flawlessly." Jennifer paused, her expression becoming more human than Zixthara had ever seen it. "We've spent 2 millennia trying to protect the galaxy while hiding who we really are. Maybe it's time to protect it by showing who we really are." Zixthara looked at the authentication code displayed on her screen. Terra Prime 77 Alpha. A simple sequence of characters that would change the galaxy forever. She thought about the improved peace and prosperity Jennifer had mentioned. She thought about the sophisticated defense simulations. She thought about the hunters consuming civilization after civilization at the galactic rim. And she thought about the fact that her trusted aide of 6 decades was a genetically modified human who had apparently been an exceptional judge of character and administrator despite, or perhaps because of her dual nature. "If I activate this code," Zixthara said slowly, "there's no going back." "No, there isn't," Jennifer agreed. "But there's no going back from the hunters either. They're coming whether we're ready or not. The question is whether we face them as we really are, or continue pretending to be something we're not." Zixthara's hands hovered over the holographic interface. The weight of the decision seemed enormous, not just for her career or her species, but for the entire structure of galactic civilization. Then she thought about something Jennifer had said. "We didn't conquer you through force. We improved you through excellence." Maybe that was what the galaxy needed right now. Not the comfortable lies of separate species maintaining their independence, but the uncomfortable truth of a civilization that had already been unified by the most adaptable species among them. She entered the authentication code. Across the galaxy, sleeping protocols activated. In the Krillian Military Command, General Morix, the Brutal's morning briefing began with an announcement that he was actually Colonel Marcus Thompson, and that humanity needed their help. In the ethereal collective, Nexus Prime Veltar revealed that her name was Dr. Victoria Summers, and that she had technologies that could save them all. On 17 worlds, in 43 space stations, and aboard 200 ships, humans dropped their disguises and offered their true capabilities to civilizations that had thought they were leading themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. But perhaps, Zixthara thought as she watched the responses flooding in, it would finally be ready for what was coming. The most restricted file in the galactic network had been written in English not because humanity was primitive, but because they were the only species advanced enough to need that level of security. And now, for the first time in 2 millennia, they were ready to prove it openly.